Hello. If you're watching this, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you've just watched my latest video, Introduction to the Norwegian Language, and that you hopefully liked what you saw. Anyway, in making that video, I ended up with a couple of funny and/or interesting things to mention that didn't quite fit in there, and so I decided to try out this footnote video thing instead. Let's see how this pans out. Okay, so, fun fact number 1. Norway. Because not only are a ton of words different in nynorsk and bokmål, the actual name of the country is different. In the former, it's called Norge, and in the latter, it's called Norge. Why not? Historically, of course, they are exactly the same word, although the pronunciation of this one is taken from Danish, kind of. Which one of these it actually was, we'll have to save for another presentation, since there's no clear consensus on this issue, but whichever word it now happened to be, it turned out different in different dialects, leading the different written forms to pick up different versions of it. Also, in Swedish and Danish, the name for Norway is identical to how it's written in bokmål, and since this variety is a lot more prominent, it's also what Swedes and Danes are used to seeing. This sometimes leads to funny situations, like Swedes stopping at the border and wondering what the hell is going on, or the story of a philatelist who got very excited about having found what he thought was a rare Norwegian stamp with the name of the country misspelled, which it wasn't. So, Norway, Norway. Bokmål, nynorsk. Both official, both Norwegian. Let's look at some more names, and fun fact number 2. By an astonishing coincidence, the names of both famous writers mentioned in the other video contain the vowel sequence AA. This is in fact the old way of writing the letter O, but since names often tend to be quite resistant to spelling reforms, the AA spelling lingers on in several names all across Norway. Another famous person who used this spelling was the linguist Ivar Aasen, who's most known for being the man who laid the foundation for the nynorsk language form in the mid-1800s. As for the letter O, this was in fact imported from Swedish in 1917, 12 years after the collapse of the Union, when I suppose Sweden wasn't considered much of a threat anymore. And thus it celebrates 100 years of being in the Norwegian language this very moment. Congratulations, O! Now, fun fact number 3 regards the origin of the name nynorsk. As I'm sure people will point out to me in the comment section, this name literally means New Norwegian, and not Modern Norwegian, which was the translation given by me. And yes, if we're aiming for a literal translation, this is absolutely correct. But if you consider that Norwegian gulrot literally means yellow root, you can perhaps see the point I'm trying to make, since the translation we'd actually want here is carrot and nothing else. Because here's the thing, the term nynorsk was not taken to refer to a new kind of Norwegian, but to the modern stage of the Norwegian language it was supposed to represent, in contrast to the older stage Middle Norwegian, which was spoken and used before the Danish takeover. And in Norwegian, the historical stages of the language are in fact called gammalnorsk, mellomnorsk, and nynorsk, just like we in English have Old English, Middle English, and Modern English for the equivalent periods. The confusion today has arisen exactly due to this double meaning that the term nynorsk acquired after being given to the written standard as well, but as to what it originally referred to, there is no doubt. For anyone who remains unconvinced, I can also point out that the Norwegian terms nygresk and nyislandsk are still completely uncontroversially translated into English as Modern Greek and Modern Icelandic. Okay, fun fact number 4, political support for the two language standards. As I mentioned in the other video, when nynorsk and bokmål got going in the late 1800s, the former was primarily supported by liberals and the latter by conservatives. And while this seems to give a nice and antagonistic left-right dualism at first glance, it's actually a horribly skewed political spectrum from the perspective of 20th century European politics. Because to make this accurate, we need to add a third option to the left to fit the Social Democrats and their friends the Labour movement. And this left option was in fact a major political bloc already in the early 1900s, and so you may wonder, why didn't I mention them earlier? Well, because they didn't care is why. Unlike the other two ideologies, for which the two language forms had strong symbolic value with regards to national awakening versus tradition, the Labour movement basically thought that this was a pretty stupid thing to bicker about when a lot of people were still poor as hell, and they might have had a point there. Also, they had the problem of representing the urban lower classes, whose language was definitely urban but nowhere near as influenced by Danish as the speech of the middle and upper classes, which made choosing sides quite difficult. And so when they finally did get around to getting an opinion on the issue, the two varieties were already well in place, and the Labour Party would mainly work towards merging them into a single standard instead, often based on, surprise surprise, colloquial urban speech, which also in a way is kind of the same position as before, just less passive. And we all know how that went anyway. Alright, so that's that. I hope you enjoyed this little footnote commentary thing. Thank you so much for following my channel, and I hope I'll see you again.